Oh my gosh. This is going to be such a special episode. We have someone I've actually been trying to get on the show for years. We've got Premal Shah, the president and co-founder of Kiva. You don't want to miss this episode.
Welcome to the Your Mark on the World show with your champion of social good, Devin D. Thorpe.
Premal, welcome to the show.
Thanks, Devin.
We're thrilled to have you. My gosh, I've been hoping to get you on for as long as I can remember. Since I started this show, we've been hoping to get you on. One of the people we had early on the show is a fellow by the name of, it escapes me here now that I need it, Thane Kreiner.
Okay, sure.
At GSBI. And you were one of the early GSBI participants. And anyway, I admire the work that you're doing and that they're doing. And it's been a long time since I've wanted to have you on the show. We're thrilled to have you.
Great. It was wonderful to meet you.
Kiva is doing amazing things. Now loaned over $1 billion in microloans to entrepreneurs around the world. How's it going?
Well, it's going well in terms of real impact and real hope that's being created truly all around the world. But there's so much more work to do. And each year at Kiva, we learn about ways that we could be doing even work with greater impact and heart and meaning, ways of really connecting people across wealth and geographic divides, using all these breakthroughs with technology to really help us kind of take care of each other in a way that feels really gratifying. And I think it's a testament to the internet community, over 1.5 million individuals who've lent in $25 increments or more, that they're willing to share their money with a complete stranger. And in most cases, that money gets repaid on Kiva. There's a 96% repayment rate on that $1 billion that's been lent out by over 1.5 million people. And it creates real sustainable change in many very marginalized or low-income communities.
All of us are guilty a little bit of picking up a hammer and seeing it as the solution to all the problems we see. Clearly, microlending is an incredible tool in a toolbox designed to help alleviate poverty, disease, climate change. I mean, it contributes to all those solutions. Where are its limits? Where are its boundaries? How can it help the most?
Well, that's a great way of putting it, which is it is one tool in an overall toolbox. And just like with any tool in the toolbox, if not used well, if not used responsibly, it might not be as helpful as the original intent. And so, when we talk about access to capital and access to credit, that's one part of kind of a total suite of financial services that includes savings, insurance, and so we don't want to overemphasize credit as the only solution around financial services, but really a full suite of things. Now, it takes money to make money, and if you are a low-income farmer and high-quality inputs like seeds and fertilizers cost a little more, but that gets you higher yields, being able to access capital at the right time and then have that repayment schedule well adapted to your cash flows. So, not paying back every week or every month like a typical microfinance loan, but maybe paying back at the end of the harvest cycle, which is called a grace period. These things are not standard in microfinance today, and we think microfinance can be improved considerably. And that's where Kiva lenders and the 0% interest capital that the internet community is lending at, research and development on the frontiers of microfinance itself to help reach maybe more rural populations or to better adapt the loan product to the cash flows of, say, farmers or students who need a longer term loan. So there's still a long ways to go in terms of improving access to capital. And we think what Kiva lenders are doing is they're looking for that sweet spot between high impact, things that help poor people make more money, and sustainability in terms of a repayment rate and in terms of something that can scale with the markets.
Now, the way Kiva works is you have partners around the world who are actually making the loans. You gather the assets through your crowdfunding site, and the loans are dispersed by partner organizations. How do you screen and work with them? What are the keys to success in that part of the operation?
We look at two things when we decide to bring on a local field partner in one of the 80 countries that Kiva works. So say we're in Kenya and an organization, a nonprofit organization, applies to raise money on Kiva for the communities that they serve. We look at two factors. One is their financial performance, their ability to be good stewards of your money. So if you lend $25 or more on Kiva, we want to make sure that there's the right controls in place, the right governance in place to ensure that this money gets to the people that they say are going to be reached and that there's good financial stewardship. Second, we look at the social impact of that organization. And there's three components of that. The first is we look at targeting. Who is it that they're reaching? Are they reaching a more rural population that the more than kind of other organizations? Are they reaching a poorer population? Maybe a group of folks who, people with disabilities who are excluded from the current market today. We look at who they're reaching. We look at their processes for measuring their impact. And then we look at the outcome data around what kind of evidence do we see that people who get access to this NGO services are actually better off than had they not got that. And that's really important for us to look at. I don't think, everyone has time to kind of scan the world and do all of that research. Our staff of about 100 people around the world, that's what we do. And then we try to make it simple for everyday people to do good in a way that they have confidence.
Well, it is, I think you get at something there I want to really emphasize and drill down on just a little bit. That there is, our tendency is to assume the outcomes of the microloan. And in fact, what is important for us to realize is no one really should care whether, Mahmoud in Angola gets a loan. What they should care about is, does Mahmoud's life change?
Absolutely.
Right? Does his life improve in some measurable way as a result of obtaining that loan? And so how do you quantify that really seemingly subjective analysis in making a decision?
Great question. And I think this is what we get really excited about, which is we have to separate out when we talk about philanthropy, the whole goal is impact. And so we shouldn't just measure inputs, which is the total dollars raised, measure outputs, which is did they get a loan or did they repay that loan? We should measure outcomes. Did Mahmoud in Angola, in your case, is he actually better off? And how do we define better off? Well, one thing I like to look at, a really simple equation, is looking at the return on capital versus the cost of capital. So how much did Mahmoud start making from the dairy income by buying 2 more cows? And if you annualize that, how does that compare to the cost of capital to buy those 2 cows? It's just a simple ROI at a very household or whatever kind of income producing asset is bought with the loan. That's the type of things we look for. And so increasingly the types of organizations that we work with don't just give a standard microloan, but they actually do what's called asset finance. So instead of basically getting cash, you might actually get a high producing dairy cow. For example, an organization in Kenya provides the farmer a cow that is pregnant and is about to calve, and so it's almost like a 2-for-1. And what's amazing about this cow is that it versus the local variety, it produces 4 times the dairy profit, but it's about twice as expensive as the local variety. So this is where a loan or access to capital to buy this productive asset that can quadruple your income makes good sense for that low-income household, for that farmer. And that's the type of organization we're looking at is, is there a strong evidence base around the outcome that that person is making more money than they were before, and in a way that covers the cost of the capital that they're paying. Does that make sense?
Absolutely. So all the money you loan is loaned at 0% interest rates. Is that right?
When you lend money on Kiva, you're lending it at 0 interest. We then turn around and pass it to a local field partner. They charge an interest rate to their borrower. And on average, the kind of interest rate that they pay is market competitive versus other nonprofits in the space. And on average, Kiva's portfolio is having a negative return on assets. What does that mean? It means that the cost of the field part, from the field partner's point of view, when they lend out money, and even as they charge an interest rate, they're still not covering their costs. And that's exactly where the 0% interest capital plays a powerful role, because what we want to do is fund those on the front lines that are doing really deep impact work that are oftentimes a little more costly than those groups that are purely commercially focused. So there's a group of organizations all around the planet doing incredible work. Their challenge is that most people don't know about them. Our challenge is to go find them, get them above the radar on our website, make it really easy for everyday people to actually finance those groups.
Now, when I make a loan on Kiva, I get a tax deduction. I've made a donation, in effect. And you are lending the money, and that money comes back, and you can lend it again and again and again until that return you talk about depletes it effectively to 0. But what is the total assets under management right now that Kiva has?
Yeah. So Devin, just to one correction there.
Please correct me.
Lending money on Kiva is like lending money to a friend. You don't get a tax deduction.
Oh,
But it is done philanthropically, because you're not expecting a rate of return. The best you can do is get your principal back. And 96% of the time, on over $1 billion lent, people have gotten their money back. And what's interesting is that 4% of times, that's the default rate, right? That's when someone has defaulted. You've picked a farmer in Afghanistan or a baker in Oakland, California, and they didn't pay back that loan. That happens about 4% of the times right now on the website. Now, in terms of the actual, that's $1 billion is the total amount that's been lent since 2005. What's actually outstanding in the hands of the working poor is around $100 million.
it's an amazing thing to think that you've built essentially a nonprofit bank for the world's poor that has $100 million at work. That's really quite an achievement.
Yeah, it's like this. It's like this global compassion bank, and I think one thing that's exciting about technology is that it allows us to really bring out hopefully the best in humanity, which is when you can get involved in someone else's story and invest in someone in West Africa or in the Bronx. It's really exciting to be a part of their business journey. And we don't have to feel a sense of pity, but we can feel a sense of excitement and a sense of partnership with someone around the planet. And that's what I think, when I go and visit small businesses around the world and, they see that there's 37 people who've backed them, someone in Kansas, someone in London, so on and so forth. It's such a, beyond the money, it's the sense that people believe in you and that we're connected and that, in a world that can be cynical at times, it's a case for hope that strangers will care about strangers across wealth and geographic divides. And so, I think there's certainly a lot more work to be done. There's still 2.4 billion people on the planet who lack access to basic financial services. There's still a lot of improvements around even those people who do have access, actually making it truly work for them. And yet, it's really exciting, some of the progress that we've made together with, now a community of over 1 million people.
What's the thing that you've accomplished at Kiva that you're most proud of?
One of the really special moments was seeing someone in Kenya, in Nairobi, Kenya, lend to someone in San Francisco where Kiva is headquartered. So we have an office in Kenya. We have an office in San Francisco. And typically you're thinking the money goes from San Francisco to Kenya or to Nairobi, you know, kind of north to south or west to, you know what I'm saying? And to see the money reverse direction speaks to, I think, what's common about being a human, which is we all want to feel a part of something. We all want to help. We like to do it in a way that's affordable for us, where there are real meaningful feedback loops. And it's cool to see, you know, folks from countries that are generally seen as poorer helping people in countries that are seen as richer too.
That's great. Well, Premal, what's the most important lesson you've learned in your years at Kiva?
I think there's something around, you know, when you go out and visit these small businesses around the world, and there's been now over 2.2 million small businesses, 80% which are women run, and you get to know their business. One thing I see in common is an incredible resourcefulness, resilience, a kind of a desire to, you know, kind of, there's that kind of entrepreneurial gleam in people's eyes, like a kind of a sense of like, hey, you know, palm oil is cheap right now. If I had another loan, I could go do this. It's really fun, you know, when we think in terms of what does it mean to be entrepreneurial? What does it mean to see possibilities? What does it mean to kind of reframe one situation into something where you actually see the resources that are still available to you? And yes, you know, what does it mean to you know, I think there's kind of two things in life. One is return on luck, and the other one is resilience, you know, when things don't go well. And I've learned so much from so many people that I've had the great pleasure of visiting around those two things.
Yeah, that's fantastic. Probably you are obviously a brilliant guy, well-educated, well-trained, well-prepared. You could have done anything. Why this?
Well, you know, I think there's the currency of money and the currency of meaning. And it is so wonderful to pursue a path where you feel real purpose. And for me, it felt, you know, I was lucky enough to work at PayPal for the first several years and learn a lot about technology and internet platforms like PayPal and eBay. And you can buy from a complete stranger on eBay. Why can't you invest in a complete stranger? Maybe not on eBay, but on another website, especially someone who needs a little bit of capital to, you know, start or grow a small business. Like, it just seems like an obvious good thing, like a correct idea that ought to be, you know, ought to, you know, have its light of day. So I think it was more just kind of this desire to want to put something out there, to make the world a little more fair, to make it feel, make us all kind of, you know, really, I think all progress rests on a larger sense of us and a smaller sense of them, right? And so, you know, the web, I mean, just like you and I are talking, you're in Salt Lake, I'm in San Francisco, like it can really connect us, and it's up to us to give it some purpose. And so it feels really meaningful. We had a lot of work to do still, but it's you know, it's an incredible privilege.
You talk about having a lot of work to do still. You've done so much. How do you feel about what you've accomplished relative to what lay ahead? I
mean, candidly, Devin, you know how you're never quite happy with yourself? I don't know. I mean, or the trick in life is to be grateful, because gratitude's the ultimate wealth. And that's another thing I've learned from, you know, people who live in real conditions of poverty. It's just so much about the mindset and how you look at things. And I also think that kind of what propels us is never really being quite happy or satisfied. So, you know, part of me goes, yes, there's a lot of ground to cover, a lot of folks to support. I think there are things about our own website experience. You know, if you lend on Kiva and you want to help someone, I think we can make it. It takes 5 seconds on average for our website to load each page. You know, some pages are faster, some pages are slower. I think that takes too long, you know? So there's just like things like that, like really mundane things to, Right now we're looking at what's happening in Bangladesh with the Rohingya, and it's challenging for us to work in Bangladesh because of some regulatory issues with the government there, but we'd love to be able to support that cause. When you look at the crisis of refugees, people think oftentimes in humanitarian terms, but it's such a long-term situation, such a protected situation, that we need to think about long-term livelihoods and market-based approaches as well. And so, I think we, need to do more work there. We are doing some good work in the Middle East with Syrian refugees, but there's a lot more work to be done given the magnitude of the situation, as well as looking at the intersection of how people can make money and be good stewards of the environment. That's the real win for all, right? So when there's the opportunity to finance, something like a biodigester for farmers, biodigesters convert animal waste into fuel and fertilizers. An incredible machine. Oftentimes, like in Mexico, it can cost $500 to $700, really expensive for a poor farmer. And so then they go and spend money on fertilizer and fuel, which is, not as good as this more sustainable source of actually, getting a biodigester on their land. And financing can make that affordable for a low-income farmer, and it's good for the planet. It's good for them. It's good for the planet. I think there's more kind of win-for-all solutions out there in a variety of areas, and we'd like to fund more green loans as well.
Fantastic. Well, Premal, what is your superpower?
Wow. I don't know what my superpower is, but I will say that something that I know I feel like I bring to the group at Kiva is when I get excited about something, it's almost like, for me, it's like, oh wow, like I think it's just passion. It's just like, I know I get carried away by my own passion and a belief in possibilities and a curiosity about how we might get what's seen as difficult done, breaking things down into smaller problems and just working away at it and letting the work teach us. So I think there's something around kind of passion and possibilities. I don't know if it's a superpower, but it's something that I think I get to bring every day to the team at Kiva, and the team at Kiva compliments me in so many ways. There's no way we would have gotten to this stage without just such an exemplary set of folks with real commitment.
Oh, fantastic. Premal, we sure appreciate you taking the time to be with us today. Appreciate the great work you're doing. Before you go, would you take just a moment to tell our audience how they can learn more about Kiva and how they can connect with you personally?
Kiva, the best way to check it out is to go to kiva.org, our website, and make a $25 loan, 96% repayment rate. So it's pretty low risk that you'll lose that $25. And then you can follow us on, all the standard social channels. But check it out. And then we have programs for folks to get involved. If you wanted to go volunteer abroad, and that's something that you've always thought about, we've had over 800 volunteers go out to over 80 countries. We'll train you in San Francisco and send you out for 4 to 6 months. It does a lot of good to have more help, because there's a lot of ground to be covered.
Fantastic. Well, thank you so much for being with us today. We wish you every success and continue to help alleviate, reduce, and eliminate poverty around the world.
That's the hope. Thanks, Devin.
All righty. Let's do some good.
Thank you for listening. Devin Thorpe's mission is to end extreme poverty, improve global health, and mitigate climate change before 2045 by finding and sharing the stories of those who are doing the most good. You can join with other listeners to accelerate Devin's mission by visiting helpdevin.org right now.